organized subgroup within the main Republican Party that is more interested in taking down individuals with whom they don't agree than in electing representatives who will find bipartisan legislative solutions to America's problems. Democrats were not immune to the new political reality. In 2010 in Arkansas, unions spent an estimated $10 million trying to defeat Senator Blanche Lincoln. She narrowly survived a primary runoff with Lieutenant Governor Bill Halter, but was defeated in the general election. I served with Blanche on the Senate Finance Committee and saw firsthand her tenacious commitment to her state. Democrats even turned on a former vice presidential nominee when, in 2006, Joe Lieberman lost a primary in Connecticut to a more liberal candidate, Ned Lamont, only to run and win as an independent. Joe had built a distinguished record on national security, but was viewed as too conservative and too close to then-President Bush. These were both instances of outstanding public servants being targeted by their own party. As the same take-it-or-leave-it divisions have been echoed in the media, more and more constituents told me they simply no longer watched the news. I understand why so many Americans are fed up with government. The 112th Congress was almost universally derided as the worst ever. It was the most polarized body since the end of Reconstruction, according to one study, and I grew embarrassed by its partisan bickering, inactivity, and refusal to address the vital challenges facing America. Our job approval ratings were deservedly terrible. In some surveys, the percentage of Americans who approved of the Congress's performance plummeted into historically low single digits. When someone mentioned to Senator Tom Coburn, Republican Oklahoma, in 2011, that Congress was at a 13% approval rating, he replied, "I want to know who those 13% are." Senator Michael Bennet, Democrat, Colorado, published a chart that showed that our popularity was on a par with that of Hugo Chavez, and significantly less than perennial favorites like bankers, lawyers, and the Internal Revenue Service. I'm not a person who tends to rhapsodize about the past and how things used to be better, but I know enough Senate history to understand that the 112th was not typical. Earlier in my own career and throughout its history, the Senate has transcended its divisions, risen to the occasion as an institution, and earned its status as the world's greatest deliberative body, a description that in recent times is often tinged with sarcasm. One triumph was the Senate's rebuttal of President Franklin Roosevelt's attempt to pack the Supreme Court with sympathetic justices in 1937. FDR took it for granted that the loyal Senate, controlled by his Vice President, John Garner, would rubber stamp his legislation that was designed to thwart any Supreme Court challenge to New Deal legislation. Instead, individual senators did what the Constitution mandated them to do and stood up to the president, and the deliberative body did what it was allowed to do when it conducted unlimited debate, both in Judiciary Committee hearings and on the floor of the Senate. Several senators made impassioned speeches in favor of judicial independence, including Joshua Bailey of North Carolina, whose powerful oratory changed other senators' minds. Seduced by his own overwhelming popularity, Roosevelt overplayed his hand and was ultimately thwarted by a bipartisan coalition of Republicans and conservative Democrats. Historian Robert Caro describes this episode in Master of the Senate, Part 3 of his indispensable biography of Lyndon Johnson. In 2005, Harry Reid drew the passage to my attention when he sent me a photocopy of it, along with a handwritten note saying that it reminded him of me. It is the kind of friendly and collegial gesture that senators often make toward each other. Harry's note coincided with the systematic Democratic filibuster of President George W. Bush's judicial nominees, which was a corrosive force in the Senate. The Republican Majority Leader sought to break the logjam by exercising the so-called nuclear option, by which a cloture motion to end a filibuster could be passed by a simple majority rather than a 60-vote threshold. A cloture motion ends debate at once.